Joining us for more on tonight's topic is Mark Young, Urban Affairs reporter for the Bradenton Herald, Melissa Wandel, president of the National Coalition for Safer Roads. She helped inspire the passage of Florida's red light camera law in 2010, and Bradenton City Councilman Bemis Smith. Thank you all for being here. I guess here is the central question. Are red light cameras effective in terms of cutting down, in terms of people driving through them?
I think the answer is very mixed. I think you can go out there and find different studies and different data that will fit your argument. That's been my experience thus far. And I think that's what you're finding in other cities that are taking their cameras down, and some like Orlando who are expanding their cameras. It's just a matter of how they want to interpret that data.
And actually, in the one of your last stories that you wrote about, the information was given to the city council, and it said that there's actually been an increase in accidents at camera intersections, but a significant decrease in angle accidents, which I would imagine are more severe.
Right.
Well, and that's true, and that was one of the factors that came up in the discussions when we first put on red light cameras. Is a lot of the national studies, which were done mainly in the Northeast at that time, showed an increase in accidents, rear end accidents when people are stopping, but a decrease in the number of angled accidents, which typically are more severe. In the case of Bradenton's, the information that we received at our last meeting, the accidents did increase just as we had seen in the studies, and the angled accidents were lowered as well, but the problem was that the red light running accidents basically stayed the same. And that's where my concerns came in, is that we had maybe one more and one less every year.
But you know, I was struck by something in Rick's story, the interview of the local man who said, remove all the cameras because people should be responsible for themselves. But Melissa, you know in the most personal of ways about the impact of people running through red light cameras. Your husband was killed not long after you had a baby.
We didn't even have a baby. We were 9 months pregnant that day when my husband was killed by a red light runner, and my brother was seriously injured.
So there's no doubt in your mind this is an issue of life and death.
I really, when this happened, I wanted to find a way to prevent people from running red lights. And that was, so I set out on my own to research and study red light safety cameras around this country, because I wanted to find a way for people to curb the behaviors and to retrain their brains to stop on red again. Because the issue is that people aren't doing it themselves. If people were doing it themselves, then we wouldn't have people being seriously killed and seriously injured every day due to red light running. And you know, it's red light safety cameras, it's education, advocacy, and enforcement combined that's going to take part in saving lives.
Yeah, the act in Florida was passed, I believe, in 2010, yes. And you have all these cities and communities that we're describing here that are taking different approaches. I remember when they all went in Tampa. Now they're coming out in Tampa, and you have people who fundamentally believe that this is nothing but a revenue producer for the communities.
Right, and if I may say something about that, number one, if nobody was running a red light, there'd be no money to make, number one, because that's the cause, that's the hope at the end of the day that that's not going to happen. But if people are running red lights, number one, the cameras pay for themselves. Number two, $10 per ticket goes to 22 level 1 trauma centers in the state of Florida. $3 per ticket go to the Miami Project to Cure Paralysis. So if they are making money, they're going to some good causes. There's nothing we can do about the percentage that goes to the state. That's why they passed the bill in 2010 in my husband's name. And that's what it's about. It's not about a camera, a piece of technology. It's about human life. It's the value of a human life. And sometimes we get away from that. And what we need to understand is if these cameras aren't placed in the right where they need to be, then they need to be moved. I mean, that's what the vendor, FDOT, and the communities, some of these communities, like in Orlando, they have a great program.
Right, but Mark, you also hear a lot of complaints about vendors, not only locally, but in a lot of different communities. Where is that coming from?
Where are the complaints coming from?
Why do so many people fault the different vendors out there that install these cameras?
Well, it's like any other private company that does business. I mean, they're out to make money, you know. So they are picking some intersections that are known to create more violations than other intersections. You know, it's a very passionate issue. I mean, our readership is very split on it. Some people do believe it's a revenue generator, but it's not a revenue generator locally when 90% of the money is leaving the community and not staying in the community.
Bemis?
And that's exactly the position that I've taken on this. I'm extremely sensitive to Melissa's, the impact on her life and what happened. And I agree with her on the selection of intersections for red light cameras where they actually do reduce the accidents there. The problem that we've seen in the city of Bradenton is, one, we don't make much money. We end up getting about 13% now that the state gets their cut. So out of $1 million worth of tickets that are written in our community, 130,000 comes back to the city, which is a relatively small number as a proportion of the total cost. The problem that arises that I see is we think of red light violations, but when you look at the numbers that the chief presented to us as far as the violation goes, the officers noted that an officer sitting at that intersection and watching for red light runners would not be able to tell that that person ran the red light. Out of 35, the chief gave us numbers, randomly selected 35 violations each year. And of those, in 2016 or 15 and 16, there was only 3 that were longer than 1 second after running the intersection, the light had changed.
And I tell you what, I personally, for the purposes of doing a story when they first came into a local community, sat there and watched people going through the red lights, and I could tell you how often, you know, you get, you know, it could be several per minute if you're just sitting there. But Melissa, if a lot of the opposition is due to the amount of money from these fines that are not staying in the local community, would you be supportive of new state legislation that would change that equation?
Well, absolutely. But you can, as a city or a county, you can determine where that money goes. You can take, like Orlando's program, so they've got $10 per ticket, $3 per ticket, so much money goes to the state, so much money goes to the city. Well, you can actually, the state's never going to let you take more money. I mean, we have to be realistic about politics and about Tallahassee and where the money is going. But the cities and the counties themselves can determine the portion if they want to give it back to law enforcement, if they want to give it back to fire and rescue, if they want to give it back to help with roads. Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing is that people don't understand the value of the red light safety camera, so people argue and pick and do, and they're very negative about it. He's not. But there are people that are very negative about it, and we have to really stop and get back to the table at the end of the day. Come to the table and say, this is what's working, this is not what's working. The vendor should never be the one picking the intersection. That is up to FDOT, and that is up to the city, and that is up to the counties.
We only have a couple of seconds left, but Mark, what is the trend in terms of local communities and their use of red light cameras?
It really is a mixed bag. If I could just close with one thing, I mean, a traffic engineer friend of mine said you can't engineer out bad behavior, you know, and that's really what this comes down to as well. So it'll be interesting to see which way the city council goes on Wednesday.
And of course, you know, as we discussed, this can be a matter of life and death. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here.